Welcome. Welcome to Tenox's The Year Without a Tent Show. I'm Scott Pickel, the general manager, sales rep, and mostly cameraman today. We are hosting our event in Virginia. Very cold, unseasonably cold, but very sunny Virginia. This is something that please bear with us a little bit if we have some technical difficulties. We are out in the field, and you know how equipment works or doesn't work when it wants to. I am going to read off of some note cards so that I don't miss any of the details here. We were fortunate enough to be hosted today by Special Events Virginia. A huge thank you to Mike Fitzwater and his whole staff for allowing us to be able to do this here. We are going to be socially distant during this event. We will be wearing masks absolutely when appropriate, and we're going to have fun with this today. I just wanted to tell you a little bit of the root of this idea, and I think it says it all in the name, that it's the year without the tent show. You know, several months ago when we lost events like the Matrix show, the IFAI show, and then the ARA show, you know, as vendors, we got to a point where we, you know, in talking, we're going to be not in front of people for a long time. And it's not just not being in front of people, it's not being in front of and interacting with the people that we really, really enjoy and really love in this industry. So, you know, we thought that, you know, why couldn't we do something virtual, something that incorporates some training, some demonstrations of the product, and a little bit of fun. And so here we are. And thank you for tuning into it. And, you know, we hope that this is a big success. We're in a Zoom meeting today. So you guys are all in a Zoom meeting. I'm out in the field. I can only hear the studio. I can't hear or see any of the chat, but that can all be relayed. This is going to be a format where you will be able to type in questions and ask them. We're going to try to move that all to the very end of the show today. If something's super important, we'll certainly get interrupted and we'll take those questions and try to answer them live on the air. But for the most part, you can type them in the chat and we can wait till the end and go through that. And we're going to give you as much time as you need to get through all the questions today. So the day's schedule, it's going to be a mixture of some training elements, some mixture of some just demonstrating what the product does, and hopefully a little bit of fun. We are going to end the day. As you can see, there's 3 machines behind me. I'll talk about those in a few minutes, but we are going to end the day with a straight driving competition like you haven't seen before. We're going to have 3 different size machines, 3 operators, all starting at the same time. And we're going to have a race to see which operator and machine can drive them down at the fastest. So I know there's a lot of longtime customers watching. I know there's a lot of new customers, and there's a lot of soon-to-be customers. So we hope that you all get something out of this. It's hard to put a program together that really speaks to everybody, and we hope we've accomplished that. We are also going to have a couple of interviews. We're going to go to an interview with Jukka Kytomaki, the president of Avant USA, and we also have a customer interview and that we'll go to a little bit later as well. So again, we're trying to mix it up and make it fun for everybody. But before we proceed, I want to introduce the team that we have today. Behind me, we have Matt Smith from Special Events Virginia. We have next to him Jeff Phelps, who is a Tenox team member today. And we have Courtney Tomuzza, who also is a Tenox team member today. In his home in Massachusetts, we have Jay Woodruff, who will be helping out with some of the audio, some questions, and so he'll be participating in that way. And then we also have Mike Henrik from Montage Media. He's going to be running the board. This is a very technical production, and it really works well. All the signals get sent to Mike, and he's going to be the one that's really presenting the show in the format you're seeing it. So we're very happy to be working with all these people today. And I'd like to introduce the last person, the owner of Tenox and Headox, Scott Woodruff.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Tenox's not so much of a tent show, the virtual tent show. Scott and I have had a lot of fun putting this together. truly, most of the work has been done by him. It's been interesting with COVID. It's been a big change for us. I had a choice back in March and April. Well, should I lay Scott off or should I take a vacation? Well, as it ended up, I sold my house in Pennsylvania, picked up a house in Virginia along the water. I've been working on it all summer, and Scott's been working the 80-hour weeks for me, and he's really pulled it together, and it's been a lot of fun to see him take off and run with it. Not altogether different from what he did with his company for 16 years in Cleveland, but he's done a great job, and I want to say a great thank you to Scott for the good work that you've done. He's put together some swag that's going to be sent out to people that were had the opportunity to join us. He is we got a good program put together, and we're going to switch it up, go back and forth between us. So at this point, I'm going to let him take the show on the road, and he's going to do the introduction on the a review on the machine.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So just a question, the best way to save labor and money on any job site? You guys know the obvious answer. The obvious answer is to have 3 10-oxes on every single job site. No, I'm just kidding. Although we did have 3 when we set this up yesterday, and I think we had it done in under 30 minutes, and it was pretty fun in the rain as it was. But I'm going to introduce the machine. So over here, we have our 220 machine. This little guy is a great starter machine. It drive stakes, pull stakes. It only lifts up to 700 pounds, but it'll get your 500-pound, 350-pound block and rolls. And it will push up center poles up to 60 foot wide. And later today, we're going to see it push up the center pole on this 40 by 40. Next here, we have our 523 machine. This machine lifts up to 1,700 pounds. So it's a really nice from the 220 pull stakes. It's going to move carpet for you with carpet poles. It's going to move cement blocks. It's going to work your roof panel puller. It's really going to do everything that the larger machines do. It just won't move as much materials as the 755 that we have here. This machine will lift up to 3,400 pounds and does everything else that the 523 does. Drive stakes, pull stakes, roof panel pulling, cement blocks. And many of you are familiar with one size or another, or some of you have multiples of them. So I know there were some graphics that were shown with some of the specs on these machines. One of the things you'll all be receiving in the packet is a business card that folds out, opens up, and it has a chart that will give you the weights these all lift, what each machine does. It's kind of a real nice way for you to understand what the machines do. So next, I want to go over here to the tool racks, and I want to show you the Ox tool rack. So this specifically is a tool rack for a 220 machine. It is built a little differently than the other ones are in the sense of the way the driver is positioned. The beautiful part about this is you've got your puller on one side, your driver on the other side. This unit can sit on the trailer when you go out to a job site. It can stay on the trailer. You can bring the machine in, pick up a tool, back out with it. You can go around the trailer and pick up from the other side as well. It also can be brought up to your job site and work the same way. It does have places for all your other smaller attachments to either slide in or sit inside the base of it. We make a couple versions of it. Of course, the 220 version is specific for the 5 series through 8 series. We make a little beefier one, and then we also have one that will accommodate the roof panel puller within the whole cage here. So with that said, we are going to get ready for our first demonstration, which is going to be the ox horn. So we'll be coming right back to you. You good, Mike?
Yes, and let's go to Jay. Jay, you're going to do questions.
All right.
Where's Jay?
Okay. So,
All right, so everyone, a couple of quick things. We're going to have a couple of questions here, see some trivia on what everybody knows about tent oxes. And to bring you that, I'm going to throw it to Jay here, and I'm going to unmute him, and he's going to jump in and give you some information. So first question up, Jay.
Okay, what is the TEDx record for stakes driven into grass in 1 minute? Is it 2 stakes, 3, 4, 5, or 6 stakes? And the answer is 6 stakes a minute. That's into grass. You can do about 5 into asphalt.
All right, we're going to go to the next question. We have one more question, so another 10, 15 seconds.
On average, how many stakes can the TEDx pull from asphalt in 1 minute? 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6? Basically, it's an average of 3 to 4 stakes a minute. Depends on whether you're working on base plate or going straight down a line.
Okay, here we go. And Scott, you're back on. Go for it. We don't have his mic. We don't have his mic.
Corn is actually a new product that came out only within the last couple of years. It's made up of a 2-piece system, so it's easy to ship. With these pins, you take them out, that rod will pull out. This rod is actually a solid rod up to here, then it's a Schedule 40 pipe beyond there. That makes it 2-part, and then it's mounted into the bracket. It's designed to do about 550 pounds limit on the carpet. And we're going to show you how it's typically used, but if you can visualize it, because the machine can go up to 8 and 10 feet, depending on which machine, you could be pulling the carpet off the top of your load of equipment in a truck, such as tables or chairs, or you could be reaching out a distance to get to it. What would otherwise have been a crew member getting inside, lifting one end of the carpet while somebody's on this end, then dropping it down from the truck. In our situation here, we're just on the ground to show the mobility of it, but I'm going to have Jeff come around and pick up the carpet, then bring it around as though he was ready to put it in the tent, and then we'll unfurl it. So Jeff, go ahead and connect up with the carpet.
Okay, stay with him, Scott.
The other camera, you could swing it around if you wanted toward me. So Jeff's on his way around to pick up the carpet. Now this presumes that the carpet is on its original roll, or as a lot of companies handle it, they'll take and reuse carpet, and they might use it on an existing roll, but they collapse easily, and we work in the rain. I know a lot of people will buy a Schedule 40 PVC pipe, and they'll use that. That just makes it easier to slide in and out, and it's durable for a long time. Now, in this example, Jeff's picking it up off the ground. He's going to take it around and come around to be in the position I would want, as though I'm going to load into a tent. In this case, I'm going to be in a location where the tent is located up here, and Jeff's going to bring the carpet around, so the carpet would come into the edge of the tent. So say this is a 60 by 120. He comes up to where the tent is, and then I'm going to do, I've got a 100-foot roll, I've got 120 feet in length. With another person helping me, we would typically do 2 people to pull it out. If this was new carpet, it would be wrapped the other way with the turf to the outside, so we just spin it around. In this case, it's reused carpet, and all we're doing is we're pulling it out. The nice thing is that it just comes out on its own quite easily. You've already got it straightened out, and rather than take it too far, we're just going to leave it at that. But it gives you a sense of the mobility of it. You can put it down. And basically, it ships by regular freight. If you buy it with an original package with the tools, then in that case, there, and it'll actually fit with the tool racks. So that gives you a feel for the ox horn, the carpet pole, and coming up next, we're going to be we're going to be working on hooking up attachments. And here we go. So I've got Courtney. Courtney has the oxen roll hooked up on the 225. We're going to run the oxen roll first. So the oxen roll with the 225 is a single bar. On the traditional oxen roll with the 5, 6, 7, and 800 series, it's 2 forks. A typical block and roll, it's 18 inches by 18 by 18. So this is 2 inches shorter. It's wider, it's flatter. So anytime you pick up block and roll, it's going to stay stable and level, as contrasted with if I took the forks for the 225, which are 3 inches wide, can pick up only one. If you tried to pick it up, it gets floppy on you, and then you're fighting it to put it back down. Excuse me. So Courtney, I'm going to have you go over and demonstrate the moving around of the blocks. And we're going to just take them from a position where they are and replace them just to get the sense. It doesn't reach up to a 48-inch high truck, but it would reach up to a lower trailer. Certainly easy to move around once they're delivered to site, moving it around. So you got all the leveling capabilities there to come in and guide it. See, in this case it wasn't seated. She's able to tip it back, no problem, and it seats itself, not a problem. And then it's just a matter of stacking it. And that's at the height that you can stack right there. I don't believe you could go on top of each other with that height trailer. Now, if we were using a 5, 6, 7, or 800 series, it'd be 2 forks, and it would be a different ox plate. The difference is the other ox plate has a left-right orientation to installing them, and I'm referring to these pair of forks here that go into a different plate system.
I'm on the main camera, so run over to the close-up, get her stacking. I don't know, run over to the right, yeah.
And there she goes with a second one.
Okay, and I'm going to bring you back on, pause there, okay, slow up, and we're on.
And now you got some blocks loaded up on the truck. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to convert the machine over from the block and roll to hooking up the ox driver, just to give you a sense of the timing for disconnecting and connecting all the tools. What's involved here is unpinning it, which this one is actually already unpinned, the other one's not. But go ahead. If you have a machine with the pins and you put grease on them every so often, they're easy. When they're brand new, the paint is starting to move around. That can be a little challenging sometimes. And the goal here now is to hook up the stake driver.
Go for it. I'm on
the
camera so you can walk.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the coupler for it in a minute.
Camera. Good. Now you're on.
So she's going to get the front ears, hook them up, then she rotates under. And then she'll get off and she'll lock the pins on both sides. I'm going to save her getting off. And then she'll pull it up to clear it. So the coupler, the hydraulics on the 10-ox are geared around a multi-coupler, which is designed to have everything within this connector. So what you have is you have guide pins on the side.
That's good.
guide pins in the middle, and you have the pressure points where the hydraulics come in. It's a flat face coupler. And with that, you go in, you hook up to that, and then you pull dead over center. I'm going to let Courtney connect it up so she's doing the whole process. When it's not in use, it's parked in the parking stand, which means you're eliminating the potential for the hydraulic hoses to be dragged on the ground. Go ahead. So she's going in, she opens the cover that keeps the dust off of it. She pulled the lever down. She's lining up the guide pins. And she'll grab the lever and it's dead over center and it pulls it in. Because with hydraulics, one or another of those lines will still be under pressure. With the dead over center, it allows you to be able to pull it and defeat the pressure as you're pulling that over. Go ahead and run it just to give a feel for operations. Throttle. So, and that's a good thing to explain. It was 34 degrees here this morning. That driver has not been run today, so it's got hydraulic oil that's designed to work anywhere up to 100 degrees, and it's working today. But when you first go to start it, that hydraulic oil is about as firm as it's going to be. It could be more so if you're in a colder climate or it's outside. The machine was warmed up, but she had to circulate the pump and get the hydraulic oil from the pump into there in order to create some heat. The more she uses it, the faster it will be at the same RPM until it reaches an efficient point. Excuse me. So that gives you a feel for that. So that's Courtney. Next, we're going to go over and we're going to disconnect from the aux horn and hook up aux forks. So in this situation, he's already under Jeff. He'll line himself up with the forks. When he gets to the forks, he's going to get under the pinning, turn it, back it out, and the pins are actually going to close on their own with this one. So that from this machine up, the pins are self-closing. So you're going to see the pins click here. Pull up where he can see you on the camera on the pins. Then go ahead and rotate it back. So that's your pinning. He doesn't have to get out for it like you would on the 225. So one thing to point out is that with the aux forks, you have a tall mast, which means if you happen to have just taken off the aux driver and you were to pick this up, I don't know any reason other than hooking the pins up that you would lean it back. But if you did, you could be impinging on that handle. Go ahead and show them. And it will vary from one machine to another. So it's just something to be aware of, that when somebody gets off the machine, disconnects a hydraulic tool, it's always best to pull this back and also put the cover back in place. That way you've got kind of a safer environment. So that's the aux horn. Next we're going to go take a look at the aux plate. So on the 225, sorry, on the 755, we have the aux plate hooked up, and the aux plate handles a number of different tools. Do we have the other tools coming in or no? Just this? Okay. So we're going to be using, with the aux plate, we're going to be using the push pocket later, so we'll show you that. But the function of the aux plate, go ahead and disconnect it and then put it back on. This is Jeff Smith from Special Events. And so it's got a north, south, and east, west orientation. The aux and roll for block and roll would go in the side and be pinned. Then the up and down is used for the aux hook. So we'll go ahead and put it back in and we'll hook up the aux hook for you. The aux hook, before he hooks it up, would be used on the largest block over there. Scott, if you can turn the camera. The largest block over there, they're usually V blocks. V blocks have a rebar that goes across, and it's a deep setting. and they tend to be 1,800 pounds. Depending on the machine, you could go up to 2,400 pounds. And this tool is designed to come into the rebar, turn a 90-degree turn so it's in the strongest part of the hook and lift. If you go into a block that's not using rebar, such as an eye bolt, and you can't turn it all the way in, you shouldn't be using it for that because you want the full strength of the shank here for it. And Matt's going to show us how that's hooked up. No, bottom. From the bottom. Let me raise it up for you. With the hook forward. So we're working with special events and they don't happen to use this tool, so I've stumped them. That's all right. Correct? Because they have a different system they use, and that is the case with every company. So when it's in the, rotate it to the horizontal, rotate it all the way, keep going. When it's in this position, it's where you're coming in to pick up and meet a block. Then you rotate it 90 degrees. Keep going. And at 90 degrees, that's the point at which it has the most strength in order to pick up, so it's delivering the entire, a little bit more. It's using the entire thickness of this shaft to pick it up. If you don't apply it to that logic, then you're going to be breaking the pins. You know, you're going to be bending the tip out on it. So that gives you an idea of that. So other components that would be on this would be the ox push pocket for pushing center poles. There's an ox push 60 for a specialized application on some of the smaller pole tents. And of course the ox and roll. So that gives you a feel for the ox plate. So next up, we have an interview with Avant's president, U.S. division. It's Jukka Kytomaki. Jukka joined Avant many years ago in Finland. He was given an opportunity to take over the U.S. market. I believe I met him about 3 years ago, and we've just struck a wonderful relationship with them. He's all about the service and supporting us, and we support them. And we're very appreciative for the relationship we've developed with Avant. And I'm going to turn it over to Jay. Jay and Jukka, where they're going to do the interview. It's a tape function. Thank you.
So welcome, Jukka. I'm so glad that you could take the time to be with us today, answer some questions. You've been running through the same things that we have in terms of the pandemic. And I was wondering how things are going at Avant, both in Finland and in the USA through this pandemic.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Yeah, it definitely has been an interesting year so far, but Avant is doing really well. Obviously, this pandemic has caused a lower demand for goods and services around the world, but overall we are doing pretty good. Avant is isn't in a unique situation that we have so many different customer segments that while some other segments are struggling, there are some other segments that are very strong.
Wow.
Since we have so many different countries that we serve also, we have over 65 countries. Some countries are doing better than the others. So in that sense, Avant is doing really well. And the factory has been able to keep their production up 100%. In terms of our team over here in the US, we have been also in a good place that we have been able to keep our doors open the whole time, keep the ball rolling. And in fact, 2020 will be our record year. So,
oh my gosh,
can't complain too much.
Oh, outstanding. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Do you think that as you're expanding the dealer network, it's going to help enhance the support for 10X customers in the US and in Canada?
Absolutely. It's really a must in our business. We need to have an extensive dealer network. And especially in a market like the US or North America in general, where it is so big. Avant is all about having as little downtime on the machines as possible. We want our customers to be able to do their job and not to worry about too much about the service availability or taking their machines hundreds of miles away from where their job site is. So that's what we're really working on.
I wanted to move on to the point last year when Tenox and Avant moved from a 4-year casual cooperative relationship to a true partnership. And I was curious, what benefits have you seen from the enhanced business relationship?
Oh, it's been great. Actually, to be honest, we are really fortunate to be a partnership with Tenox. It has really opened up a segment for us that I don't think we would have been able to penetrate ourselves. Having said that, it's been a win-win. I think also from Tenox side, Tenox is now able to order the machines direct from the factory with all the options and just the way Tenox customers would like to have them. So the machines are really built for the needs of party rental companies. Although the machine itself is the same, but we have over 40 different options. In some models, it's over 50 different options. So one size does not fit all in that case. It varies quite a bit.
Right. And it's interesting. We're getting quite a few of our customers who are ordering the Avant attachments for the stuff that's outside of the tent industry that they do, whether it's snow plowing, moving stuff. We get lots of images from people who have been moving logs and other things, all stuff that the Avant attachments, 200 or so, allow you to do. So it's definitely worked both ways in terms of access, giving our customers the ability to do more with their machines than just raising and lowering tents.
No, definitely. I've been following Tenox Facebook quite a bit. And so it's interesting to see that how many other different types of uses the customers have been able to find. And it's
so as we conclude, I know that Avant has made a significant new product announcement that's going to appear soon in the U.S. The model 735. It's a tremendous in-between model, I think, between the 600 and the existing 700 series models. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We're pretty excited about this new product. It is kind of a, like you said, in the middle, but it's also a unique product itself. All the machines that Avant manufactures, basically, there is a design criteria and a purpose behind all the machines. And for the 735, the idea is to provide the best lift capacity price ratio that in the market. And the way it's done, it's basically taking the best things from both sides, the 600 and the 700, mix them all together, and there is the 735. So in general terms, the 735 has the same lift capacity as the 700 with the price of a 600. In fact, I think it is priced a little bit less than a 640. So in that sense, we are providing pretty good price for a very high lift capacity. Right. So with the 735, it has the same engine as the 600 series. So it's a 26 horsepower machine instead of 57 horsepower that the 755, 760 provide. And the hydraulics are a bit different from the 700 series. They are more similar to 600 series, but the chassis and the basics of the machine are from the 700 series. So that enables the machine to lift the same amount as the 700 series.
Wow.
But pushing power and the auxiliary hydraulics, they are less than on the 700 series.
It seems to me, knowing what I know about the 600 series and watching it in action, in terms of pushing poles and most of the other tasks, certainly driving stakes, pulling stakes, there shouldn't be a great deal of difference between 735 can do compared to the 600 series. And then it has the additional material handling capacity, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think 735 will be a really great addition to our portfolio. And what I have heard, this machine was introduced in Europe a little bit earlier, and the feedback has been really, really good.
Oh, no kidding.
And people who really need that extra lift capacity, but not necessarily all the horsepower, they really love the machine. And,
Right.
We have high expectations for this machine, and I think it would fit your market pretty well as well.
Yeah, we think of the scenario of people who aspire to a 700 series machine would be pretty excited about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. So when is that going to become available?
Actually, the first machines are arriving in the US as we speak.
Oh, no kidding.
It is within December. So we are planning to introduce the machine probably early next year, once we have a little more machines on the ground.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you very, very much for taking the time to do this today.
Thank you.
I appreciate it very much. And look forward to seeing you and talking to you again soon.
Will do. Thanks, Jay.
All right. Thanks. See you later, Jukka.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right, so we're gonna work on the ox driver a little bit here. So it's hooked up to the 755. I've got Matt Smith from Special Events working it today. I'm gonna talk about the setup a little bit. Well, the first thing is it was hooked up with the driver onto the interface plate and hydraulics. We've been through that. Now it's a matter of how do you position the driver and how do you maintain the driver. Well, let's start with maintaining the driver. Every machine, every system we send out, we'll send out a tool rack if they buy it, and this will be in the tool rack. It's a special grease. It's got a moly compound. It's different than the grease that you have on the machine. The difference is that moly allows it to work with a higher operating temperature, and it'll also handle pressure. This pressure is referring to the pressure of metal against metal. The moly has better properties for this type of activity. To grease this machine, it calls for it to be greased every 2 to 3 hours with 10 pumps. And when it's greased, this should be dropped to the ground. So go ahead and drop it. So that this is pressed in. So that's the optimum position. You hook up the grease. And it's 10 pumps. This one's been greased, so I'm not going to do more. This should come off hard. It's difficult to get off. That means it's on. If you didn't get it on all the way, it's going to squirt on you. And I'm going to take it off. And that's normal. Now, when this is greased properly, on a hot day, if you're doing a 60 wide and you're going to do 100, 200 steaks, that grease is going to get very liquidy, and you're going to see it start to show in the breather holes. This here is not a nut. It's a breather. The 6 sides of it have vents in them, and the only 2 moving components it is the driver pin from the firing side and the pin for driving the stake. There's movement in between them. This venting is what allows that movement to go around. If it's greased properly, it's probably over greased. Eventually you're going to see grease coming out. If it's under greased, it's going to be dry like this. This is a machine that hasn't been used much and it was cleaned up. But if it's well greased, you're going to see a little bit of spray in 6 points. If it's over greased, you're going to see globs of grease coming out. I've seen all of them. I can tell you if I go to a place and there's globs of grease coming out, I'm happy because I know they're maintaining it properly. No grease means that this gets dry and it gets in there and it has the potential to heat up, and eventually that can cause the tool to fail in a number of different ways. It could be the seals, it could be the metal seizing with inside, so you want grease. This one, no indication of grease, but it's because it's not being used this time of year. It's been cleaned up well, and I use that as an indicator though. if you use the molly grease on the rest of the machine, for which you have about 8 to 10 points, understand that this molly grease doesn't come out of your clothes, and that's why I recommend general purpose grease like you would use on a truck or other equipment if you're going to be greasing, and use this and dedicate it to the driver only. Next, we're going to talk about how to position the driver. There you go. So go ahead and start it up, Matt. So the typical operation of the driver is, first of all, it's always fully extended. So go ahead and lift it up, fully extend it. And all of our stakes go in straight. We don't go at angles. I know there's situations where you do, but for the sake of this discussion, 95% of the stakes that we see for most applications are going in straight. So if a stake is intended to go in vertically, it's going to have its most power when it's put in straight with no ovaling of the hole as it's going down. So what we want to do is set the driver up to be on the same axis. So in order to have the driver, the operator sits here, he's got 2 line of sight places where he can tell whether it's level. One is the top of this. If you come around here, Scott, he can look across the top of this plate, and he's going to line this up with your eye level. Then bring it in to where you think it's level. So all he's doing is he's sighting, and he's trying to determine what's level from there, because if he didn't look at that, he's probably going to be in or out too much. And then if I take a level just for concept and I put it across there, in fact, it could come out a little bit. And there you level. The other place you would do it is to raise it up higher, so you line up with the sandwich bolts. There's 4 bolts that go there. And again, the same thing, you'd hold it up here. And if that's level, it means that's plumb. The whole idea is that you want it to go straight in. The next thing I want to point out is that when you're ready to drive a stake, and it's 42 inches tall, when he lowers the driver, he's always seeing an arc. So in this case, I'm going to just sit this here, but I want you to lower the driver all the way to the ground. So you see how it's rotating out because it's got an arc going on. So the technique for driving stake straight is to get on the stake and move back to anticipate that, so you could get it to stay straight. And we're going to demonstrate that over on the stake beds that we have over there. So let's move over to the stakes. So if I'm going to train somebody who's never run the machine, I'm going to put them through a drill. And this is the drill I'll put him. Nope, he doesn't know what I'm asking. Raise it up. So that was parallel to the stake. It's now moved back about 12 inches. So the idea is come up on the stake, come down onto the stake, okay? You can pull it back up and stop right there. Okay, come on the stake, then pull the stake back, and then as it goes down the first 6 inches, it's going to bring it back upright, and then he's going to go back a little bit more. So initially he gets on it, he pulls it back 5 inches, then he pulls it back another 3 inches. So in the overall of running from here to the ground, he'll have moved back roughly 8 inches, and then that'll be what's the goal, is to get it straight. Now, again, we're trying to avoid an ovaled hole, because an ovaled hole doesn't have as much holding power. And we're also trying to avoid sideways movement, which we generally can, but you'll see people struggle with that when they're first learning staking. So in this case, I'm going to let him get on the stake. So go back and come on. But typically we'll throttle to about 1,500 PSI or RPMs, okay? And it's going to get on it. He's going to pull back 5 inches. He's going to start driving it, and then he'll pull back a little bit more. Now, when he gets on it, initially, the idea is when he gets on it, by moving back right now, it's pre-positioning his shoes to the right pedal to move backwards. And then when he's got to go the next one back. So go ahead and pull back, Matt. And drive her in. Pull back over. All right, so that's a basic driving of a stake. If I was setting up a stake line here, it would be on a, say, a 60, 80, 100 wide, it would be a combination of stake bars, maybe some singles, and with the pattern that we have, the whole idea is to set the work up so it's efficient. So my straps might be on here, but they'll be in this area, preserving the ability to run the tires down here and the whole length. There's not going to be any side poles in the way. We're not going to have any top in the way. It's going to be straight running and driving. He's going to drive the farthest one first in the ideal setting, because doing the farthest one first pre-positions you for the next one and for the next one. Understanding that when you're doing blacktop and there's certain conditions where you need to do the ratchet first, and maybe that's in the center, you might choose to use the center one first, but ideally, if you have the option on grass, you'll do the farthest one first and keep then moving it back. So let's go ahead and do this one. So the lower the RPMs you have, the easier it is to maneuver and get on the stake. So he's going to pull back 5 inches. He's going to start it down. If he went more than 5 inches, so if he had gone more than 5 inches, he would have been impinging on the bar, because the bar only has so much movement. In this case, he's already got it a little bit too, because this is really soft ground. It was rain yesterday. This is kind of settling in, but you can pull it back a little bit more just to try to get where we want to be. Go ahead. And go ahead and do the next one. Okay, so if we were to do the closest stake first, look at the difference in positioning. So Matt, I'm going to have you do the closest stake first this time, and then go to the second one. Now, one of the things that's going on here is he has the boom fully extended and he's got it plumb, but he never changes the position of either of those. And I'm moving back because I'm trying to get out of earshot, because I don't have hearing protection on. So how many stakes a minute in grass can somebody do? Now, when he picks this up, it's going to come back here. Now he has to come in a greater distance. It just takes longer. So that's my point on the positioning. Let's go to this one now. At some point in time, I'm going to get your wheels cockeyed so I can show that technique for straightening it out. If they happen to be curved, that's fine. I'll correct it with you the way we talked about, okay? And you can go ahead and fly through 3 steaks, okay?
I'm gonna do 3.
All right, so I want you to go out and come in cockeyed so you're on a turn when you get to the next one. So what I want to point out is the greater the wheels are turned when you go to start a steak, the more it needs to compensate. The more you need to compensate. So what I want to point out, go way back and come in with a sharper turn, okay? Now come over. All right, now bring it up. So bring it over here. I'm going to simulate, if this was a steak and he was turned like this and he was trying to go down and he was on the steak at this point, when he backs up, it's going to swing and he's going to have to turn his wheel more, which you can pick up on the camera. So back up. Now turn the wheel to keep it over here, but there's no place to turn the wheel. I want to show that you're at the limits of what the wheel will turn.
Say that one more time. Can't hear.
I'm trying to explain that when you're at the limits of how far the wheel will turn, you have to change your position. So I don't know if you can turn anymore. But if he can't turn anymore, then he can't get the steak straight. He's going to end up going like this as he backs up. So the point is that when you're turned like this and you try to put a steak in, the steak's likely going to go sideways because you have no place else to turn it. So instead, go to your previous steak right here. And just push down. Now what he's going to do in order to correct it, rather than picking the driver up and driving forward and back to straighten it up, push your wheels off the ground. Now turn your wheel as much as you want. Now you can't hurt the machine, so take it all the way to the limits. Keep going. Turn until it won't go any further. Now turn it the other way till it won't go any further. The point is you can't hurt the machine, so if you can reposition yourself to be straight and then go to the next steak, you saved yourself running back and forth. So now straighten yourself out now. Bring it straight. And now do the next steak. And that's a huge time saver. And go ahead and do that one. Go ahead and do that one. Jeff, can you grab me that steak? Okay, so I'm gonna have you come over to Jeff here. Drive it through here. All right, so sometimes we're working with blacktop and we're not pre-drilled. If we were pre-drilled, then the steak's gonna be, let's talk about blacktop. If this is fresh blacktop, they just finished a hospital addition and it's fresh blacktop, it's going to be soft. It's not going to be firm yet. If you drive your stakes in, you want to get them to be nice and clean. You probably pre-drill, because if you don't pre-drill, then when you pull the stake out, it tends to spall the soft material back out. So in brand new blacktop, I would pre-drill. In old blacktop, where you're going to put plugs in, I wouldn't necessarily drill. I would direct drive, but I want my direct driving to be as precise as possible. We're not going to drive it in here, but we're going to show you what happens in the way that you drive it. To drive it properly, you get on the stake. Go ahead. Okay. Then you start the driver without letting it go down so it can start to create the hole, and then only let it down ever so slowly, because in the blacktop it takes a few seconds to get through the first 6 inches, and until you get it down a little bit, it's not going to seat itself. There's a tendency by operators to want to keep pushing the joystick forward. The wheels come off the ground, and now suddenly they lost control because it's not deep enough to hold them in that position. So for the sake of it, if he was to start driving the stake right now and he pushed forward too quickly, it would be the equivalent of doing this. So again, he's got the driver running. Sorry, he goes to put the driver on, but he pushes forward too quickly. So imagine the driver is running right now, and his surprise as a new operator when it does this. Now, how do you correct it? Well, you pretty much have to pick up and move back and start over. So, because if he tries to correct it by just moving the wheels, then when he backs up, it's going to be crooked. So he's only better off to get straightened out before. So go ahead and straighten out. And then as if it was in blacktop, we would drive it and let it get a chance to get seated. That's the trick. Okay, you can shut it off for a second. If the stake gets in 6 inches, actually 3 inches in this, it's going to hold its position and it's going to pull the machine with it. It just has to get in. But if you start it in this way, or this way, it's going to maintain that angle. You're never going to correct it. In the grass, you can correct it, but you're ovaling the hole. Always best to try to get it in straight. And when it comes to pulling the stake, since the puller is designed to pull straight up, you look at those stakes, if one of those is at a 5-degree angle, as an operator, you can't really see that. You start to pull up, it pinges on the base, on the plate, and you don't know it, and then the stake starts binding, and that's where you get into challenges taking stakes out quicker because they're all crooked. So that's that. That's all we're going to do with the driver, but I want to talk a little bit about site management. So, Matt, come on over here.
With the machine or?
Nope, just you. So, like any job, whether this is a demo or this is a customer site, the business calls for us to do diligence to know the site that we're working with. So in this case, Scott looked at the aerial view with Matt, talked about the locations we might use over on the other side, closer to the warehouse doors out here, and we selected this area. Then Matt's next step was to do what? To determine whether it's a safe place to drive.
Call Miss Utility.
So Miss Utility in Virginia is one call, PA one call. It could be something in every different city. And what did they discover on this site? And can you show him, because he's got the camera, what the markings are?
We've got yellow gas lines here.
Okay, so you got single lines here. Okay.
Single line. Over here on this side, we've got
Electric.
3 red lines for power. So we're running 3-phase into our building.
Okay. And then you got,
On out through here,
what's your communications here?
our orange is,
Verizon?
we use Cox phone.
So Cox cable coming in here.
Comes in orange.
And where are our stakes in relation to them?
Where our stakes are 3 feet off at a minimum from either marking.
So if you go to the courses for the PA1 call, they're all the same. because they're all sanctioned by the same organization. And they use the criteria, but generally they're looking for a set-off on most of the utilities of 18 inches from the center point. But there's other markings such as the 3 lines he talked about for 3-phase, and there's other markings for conduit. I don't know what they are, but none of it assumes depth because we don't know what the depth is. They don't know what the depth is, so we can't assume that. So we're always avoiding them laterally, not vertically. And so that's what we're going through. Now, overhead utilities?
Overhead, nothing obstructing us here.
Okay. So these were public utilities got marked, but where's your property line start?
Our property line starts, I believe, about 10 feet on the other side of the fence.
Okay. So these are marked because they're going marked to the meter, and I believe certain utilities will mark in more, but you could have utilities here such as water that if the meter is out there, it's considered a private utility, and then it's the responsibility of the customer to determine whether there's any private utilities that need to be determined. Every site varies, and this is why we get pushed into waiting so much, but it's the stuff to look out for. You need to understand the difference between public utilities and private utilities. And does this mean everything's marked? It does not. It means everything's marked that's a public utility that they're obligated to mark, but there could be other utilities on the property that didn't need to be marked because they stopped at the property line.
We do have a private utility over there that we avoided.
Okay, all right. So he knows the building because he's been here a long time, and of course Mike Fitzwater's been here since they got the building, and they've done a lot of the work that's at this building, so they're very familiar. But it's an old manufacturing site, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So, all right. Anything else for the good of that subject?
That's it.
Okay. So the other thing I'd like to just share with you is that earlier we had a safety meeting. We made a conscious decision that we're not using hard hats, we're not using vests because we're working in the machines. But a typical install of this type, a safety meeting, a toolbox meeting, is just 5 minutes to say safety is important to us. And within the training of the company, you always want to have your employees understand that they consider that you consider safety first, and that you want them to speak up if they get in a situation where they feel something's not comfortable for them. And so they did. I'm not wearing ear protection. I was moving away. It wasn't at the highest level, I will admit it, but I understand if I get some comments about it, I understand that. But the point is that's where we want to be, because when you're driving stakes to the volume that we drive, we can get into a lot of noise elevation. So that's it about that. Let me go look at my cue card and see that next we're going to go over to the...
Actually, Scott, I think we're going to talk about the 179 deduction.
Oh, yes, okay.
Might take advantage of.
Yep, okay. So this is the time of year, December, leading up to the end of the year, where for 2020, if you have a purpose to try to reduce some of your profitability through purchases, you might choose to purchase goods before the end of the year so they can be taken as a Section 179 deduction in 2020 as opposed to an expense for 2021. If you're in that situation, that allows you to reduce your profitability by the portion which is used for the deduction, and thereby potentially reducing your taxes. Everybody's situation is different. If you don't have a profit in COVID times, it's not even a discussion, but there's a lot of people that have found their way in this by reducing their costs and making a clean, profitable operation even through COVID, because there was so much COVID tenting work. And if you're looking to get a machine between now and the beginning of next year, considering a purchase before the end of the year still has a value to you from a tax standpoint. Probably not a huge difference in the cost of the machine, but we're there for you. We do have the machines available, and we will talk a little bit about the machines that are available coming up this spring. But in the meantime, just want you to be aware that we're happy to take a call, give you a price, doesn't obligate you, and then you know your options. So, good. Now let's go over to the 220 and do a center pole push. Thank you. So I went out of order. So we're working with a 40 by 40, could be a 60 by 120. The point being, it's the range of size tents that this would push. It will not push every 60 wide because different manufacturers manufacture their tents differently. There's single center poles, there's heavier fabric, there's lighter fabric, but most 60 wides it will push. This is the push pocket. Push pocket is the same thing I would use if I was pushing a 80 or 100 or 120 wide with a large machine. It's the same concept. It's basically like a small bucket, if you will, for shoveling snow. It will sit close to the ground. The bottom of the pole will sit in it. As the operator pushes forward, they do need to start it up in the air a little bit, which is just a matter of on shoulder level. And at that point, the machine takes it over, they move away, and then you have a spotter. The spotter's job, who's the spotter here? Matt? Okay, so Matt's the spotter in this case, because whatever Matt's doing and seeing, she can't see from there. So if the mark that you're trying to get the pole to is right there, he's going to figure out how to get it to the right level of elevation and distance, so when it comes off, it gets in the right spot. If this is a 40 wide, it's going to drop pretty straight down because it's not a lot of forces on this from the lightness of the tent. But if this was an 80 wide and you have it on, when it comes to the position, this is beveled, and as you move it off the edge, once it starts sliding, it gets some speed up. So if you're 1 inch off the ground, it's going to be right there. If it's 3 inches off the ground, it's going to be out here because it creates a sideways force as it slides down that bevel. So it's Matt's job to tell her where to bring it, both in terms of left, right, and forward and back. And sometimes it involves adjusting this. If it was a 80 or 100 wide, we'd also be using the rubber bumper to tap it off. We would not be doing it by hand. But you could do it by hand. You could put a stake through holes if you have them, and you could work it out, but this would be more common. When it comes to using this to take the tent down, we're going to assume that on a 60-80 wide that it's on 2-bys. The 2-bys are sitting higher than the grass, and I'm able to get that lip below it, and then it's a matter of having to use a pole horse or stakes in order to work it in. Once it's in, then the machine can take it over and back out and lower that tent. So in this case, we're going to do the 40 wide, and here we go. So Matt's going to put it into the pocket. Then he's going to raise the tip a little bit because he wants to clear the fabric. And he's going to signal her when he wants her to go in. She doesn't move till she sees the hand signals. Going to bring Scott around if we can to unload it. Hold up. Wait till Scott comes around so we can see the video of dropping it down. She moves out of the way. If this was a 60 wide, certain styles, you might find yourself putting up 2 center poles at a or at an angle. Then you would be setting them in. You'd be doing the next one to that, and then you'd come around and put these the rest of the way. Because if you put the first one up, then you can't reach to connect the parts in. On other brands or other size mids, you can. So it just depends on the tent. And so sometimes you find yourself moving it twice, sometimes once. It just depends on the application. And this tent, when we put it up yesterday, we were in the driving rain. Well, that's a good question. So how many people did we have in this tent yesterday?
Just 3 of us.
Okay, so what's the world's record for 40 wides to be put up with 3 machines and 3 skilled laborers?
I think right now it's about less than 30 minutes.
Okay, so in the rain, and they used the machine for everything they could, and that was the application. Do you need it for a 40 by 40? Admittedly not, but it's used a lot for that. and in certain applications. The reality is it's a two-man job with a machine 40 by 40 and center pole being the hardest thing you do, and that's kind of what you get into here. So, all right. So up next is an interview with Jeff Hinck and Courtney Tomuzza. You've been watching Courtney here. I don't know if anybody knows what color hair she has this week, but if you don't know now, you're going to find out in the interview. And we're going to turn it over to Mike, and he's going to go ahead and run the interview.
All right. Next, we're going to go to an interview that I did with Jeff Hinck and Courtney Tomuzza of a party center in Fairfield, New Jersey. And let's bring them in. Hey guys, how are you today?
Afternoon, Scott.
Hi, how you doing?
Can you guys go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about your company?
So we're a third generation event rental company in Fairfield, New Jersey. We started out doing general rental and then morphed into a full party only, splitting party and tool as two separate complete companies. And now we're 100% party, and we've evolved over the years, going from the basic backyard parties to large corporate events to high-end weddings, backyard events, huge corporate events, all sorts of different types of events at this point. So, but we're an all full service event rental company.
Awesome. It's so exciting to grow a rental company, as many people are aware. What drew you guys to the 10X system when you first saw it?
So when we went to Matra the year that Scott Woodruff brought the 10 for the first time, I was immediately drawn to it. And I knew that we needed to have it. But we ended up not getting it for several years afterwards because it wasn't in the cards for us at the time when it was first introduced. So that was really coming from a background of equipment rental and dealing with equipment, and have used equipment in the past to try and do some of the stuff that the 10 now does, i.e. like driving stakes. We would rig stuff up and it would work to an extent. But when I saw this machine operating the way it was, I knew right away that it was going to be a game changer.
Awesome. I'm sure you have felt the same way lots of people felt when they saw the machine. That's great. What size machine did you guys start with, and what was it capable of?
So the 225 was the machine that kind of seemed the most logistical in our world. We're not as much a pole tent company as we used to be. We do a lot more in 40 wide, 50 wide frames. And so because of that, we were really looking for a staking alternative. The machines at the time that we were trying to use were more so of the gas-powered breakers in order to try to drive stakes. And so we were looking at something that was going to be significantly more versatile versus trying to have to drill or make a pilot hole and then drive a stake. Seeing what the Tentox could do in order to just drive stakes into asphalt was the major application that we were looking at as far as the capabilities that the machine could do. Stake pulling was then the next one that we were really looking at in order to try to make it so that way we can stop doing as much manual labor. Lifting wasn't the biggest thing that we were trying to do at the time, but we certainly got to the reason in order to the need of that aspect. But for the 225 was absolutely perfect for being the stake driving alternative that eliminated the need for gas-powered breakers, hydraulic breakers, or any of the pneumatic stuff that we were looking at the market, because the market just didn't have that at the time, and the Tentox really fit the bill to make our lives significantly easier. And the 225 would be able to get into people's backyards, and that was the key. In New Jersey, we've got tight properties, and we don't have the huge palatial spots that people assume that we do. And so based on that, we needed a machine that we could get into people's backyards easy.
Yeah, that was a big deciding factor as well. Picking that machine for the first one because of the size and where we generally have to set up these things. It's tight areas to begin with because it is North New Jersey. And those who know North New Jersey, everything is a postage stamp. So
Sure. Those are all great reasons to get into that platform as a starting point. So your company recently added a 755 machine to go with that 200 series. What were the reasons behind this decision?
lifting and material handling and weights. So we did add a couple of different, certainly with 2020 being what it was, a lot of ballasting needs were high demand and high required points to do different jobs and block sizes in order to do it. With the way that the storms were getting worse, every single storm seemed to progress and get a little bit stronger each year or each storm that happened. So then we had to really move towards larger ballasts and more ballasts and doing it right versus trying to just get the job done. When you're putting a tent on a property for a weekend, it's one thing. When you're putting a tent on a property for a month, 2 months, 6 months, it starts really getting to the point that you want to make sure that you're doing the proper ballasting requirements of the 10 pounds per square foot. And when you're doing larger tents, then at that point, your ballasts just get larger and your material handling becomes significantly more important. And so that's what the 755 really did for us. It made it so that way we can move weights, we can get them in and out of the job sites faster and make our guys' lives easier, as well as also then once you have it in your inventory, then you start going, well, what else could I use this for? Stage decking,
Sure.
moving flooring around. I mean, we try to move everything with it. In fact, I unloaded a tractor trailer with it just yesterday because they double stacked the tractor trailer.
Wow.
Again, the boom aspect of it and the fact that it's really a fantastic material handling forklift, it really just fits the bill in so many needs.
Wow. All great reasons to add that much larger machine. So now that you guys have both the small and the large platforms covered, how do you guys envision utilizing each of these machines in the everyday parts of your business?
I mean, really at this point, what it's come down to is with having both machines, we are taking the 225 with us almost on any job that requires weights, whether it be 20, 30, 40, or 50 wide frame. The 225 can move all 500-pound blocks without an issue. It's when you get into the larger ones, of course. And it's really also, the 225 is, I think, a really good alternative and for staking versus using the 755, especially for the smaller jobs. And even on the larger jobs, you can use it. But on the smaller jobs, when you have multiple smaller jobs, it's a much easier machine to move around. It doesn't require as much of the trailer to use. I mean, you could put it in the back of your box truck if you really wanted to, but that's not really a feasible option all the time. And then the 700 series that we got, the 755, is really great for the larger jobs where we have a lot of material handling, like flooring and whatnot, where it has the capabilities of just moving everything. And at that point, we generally bring both machines on the job when we are doing a job of that size. That way we can have two machines running, one for staking where it's not taking up as much room, it's a smaller, which is the 225, and the 755 for material handling and lifting all the heavy stuff. And it really does speed up the job significantly faster by doing so and taking a lot of the manual labor out of or off of the guys on the job, which also they like that, of course. And it also speeds up the job significantly more. And you were able to get a couple more jobs done in a day or even in a week, depending on the size of the jobs.
Great.
So.
Great. Those are all great great ways to utilize the machines. What'll be fun is a little later here in our program, we're actually going to have a competition where we let the 200 series compete against the 5 and the 7 and see which one is fastest. So that'll be fun. Hey, yes, we really appreciate you guys joining us today, chat about how the Tenox system has benefited your business. Is there anything else you guys would like to add before we say goodbye?
I mean, I would just add that I think going back to having both machines for a medium-sized company, even a smaller company that is looking to grow, I think if you're looking into this machine to begin with and you don't have it yet, buying the 200 series first, I think is a way to ease into it and to see if you really do need more for material handling, or if you just stick with that is a much easier machine to move around as far as staking and stake pulling is concerned. So that's my biggest thing. I would definitely highly recommend to companies looking to purchase, and even companies that have the larger machine already, getting the smaller machine, because it is great for quick staking and pulling, even on medium-sized job. It doesn't have to only be large jobs that you use these machines on.
Terrific. Great points. Hey, thanks again very much for coming today. You guys
Sure.
take care. We'll talk soon. All right.
You
Thanks
too.
so much.
Thanks.
You too, Scott.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Next.
All right, so here we are. We have the 520. Here we are. We have the 523 Jeff Phelps and the ox puller. Just checking to make sure we got a mic here. Yep. And we have the ox puller. This particular ox puller is the mainstream of the system. This is a double-headed stake puller. It can be used for single-head stakes if they're not seated. There's another stake puller, which is called a single-head stake puller. That one uses a jaw system to close and pull. It doesn't have as much functionality in terms of range of motion, but it does allow you to go into a base plate with a single-headed low spurter anchor stake that's seated into the base plate. But for these purposes, this is the tool we sell more often. A double-headed stake puller. It has a port on the left. It has a port to the rear, and it has a second port above that. So it strokes 12 inches. It has a cylinder that pulls at 10,000 pounds. To give you a relative proportion, if you're using a lever puller, jackjaw, you're probably in the area of 1,000 to 2,000 pounds of pull. If you're using a hydraulic puller, a walk behind, you're probably in the area of about 6,000 pounds of pull. This will put you at 10,000 pounds of pull. And the idea is to try to go to every stake and always be able to pull it. So that's our goal here. The most common side would be the side, for my experience, the people I watch, but I've been to sites where hardly any paint was missing and they would use mostly this one. The second level is really more in order to pull stakes that are stubborn. So for example, if your stake is going near a line of trees and it went through a root, you got it in, you may be able to use this port or this port to get it up 12 inches, but you can't get it any further. And the lift of this machine, when it's extended, is probably reduced to under 1,500 pounds, contracted, maybe 2,000 pounds. You want to get back to the 10,000 pound pull. So you drop this back down and get another bite on it here. And now you can get that out. And if it was even still stuck in the root being 48 inches, then you might put a 4x4 block under it to achieve that. Stake pulling, if you're not pulling on the same axis as the stake is, if the stake's at an angle and you're pulling up, you're going to have impingement on the soil, or you'll have impingement on the blacktop, or on a stake bar. You're increasing what it needs to pull, then you're going to have problems. Your challenge is to get to the right angle, or go pull other stakes if one's causing you a problem, and then come back and get the one that's not able to be pulled, because it's usually a matter of impingement, not the fact that it's that much harder into the ground. It's impinged on the stake bar. When I pull the stake bar up, we'll probably snag one and you'll see it impinging. A 2x2 stake bar, it has two holes, not a lot of tolerance. The stake can only go so far before it binds on it. So it gives you a feel for it. Connecting up is all the same operation. It's always fully extended and it's always upright. Could it be used at an angle? Absolutely. We have certain situations where you have to put it in an angle. Maybe you're short staking. If you're short staking, let's say that's a tent and this is a stake line, it presumes you're driving the stakes in an angle. It means you'd have to come in and drive every stake and move over sideways. Same with the puller. It's going to be less efficient, but it certainly can be done. For our purposes, we're going to be vertical stakes only. So, Jeff, let's have you position on the first stake up here. So the idea behind the stake puller when you're running it is to let the stake puller go down and touch the ground, then pick it up an inch. So go ahead and do that. Now lift it up so it's just hovering. So from then on, you're in a position to line up the stake. You're not too low in catching, you're not too high to be on the head. You're right where you need to be. You'd be back a little bit, so go ahead and back up. And as you come up along the stake, the idea is to get up on it and slide and let it lock in. In other words, when you get to where one part of the puller is touching it, turn it slightly left and it'll fall in the notch as you go in. And there you're locked in position. Then you run the puller. Jeff hasn't run this machine in a while because he's doing a number of different things, not just in the tent business anymore. Press the wrong button, it stalls out when it's in an idle, but it's giving you 10,000 pounds pull. Go ahead and take it up. Typically, the bite is right at the very bottom, so at this point, you can use the arm to pull it up. Okay, so if I was on blacktop, I would pick it up a little bit further. I would put it down, and I would kick it left and put it down some more, and that's how I'd leave it in blacktop. And the reason I do that with blacktop is because with blacktop, if you don't get the stake completely out, they start binding on each other. In grass, I'll leave the stake in, and the reason is because if I'm in a field or if I'm in grass and my truck's way over there, I want to be able to see my material. On blacktop, I can see it now, but on grass, this just means less chance of us leaving something behind. So I'm okay with that. The grass is flexible. You know, we had the rain yesterday. Now, if I was on campus or if I was at IBM and it's a pristine lawn, I'm going to be more careful and I'm not going to let any chance to disturb the ground. I'll probably pull them and be as precise as I can. Now, sometimes when you pull stakes, they impinge on each other, and I'm going to try to simulate that by getting on this one. You throttle up.
Well, no, I was asking you wanted to do the middle one. I couldn't hear you.
Middle one, yep. Drop it down like I taught you. All right, but for this one, I'm going to try to create an impingement, which means I'm going to have you move back a little bit while you pull. So start pulling and move the machine back to try to see if we can catch the other stake. So move back. Keep moving back. Okay, it's not going to do it, but what I was after, move over sideways for me, okay? Go ahead and pull up. So I want you to imagine this being fresh blacktop, and you're not taking one stake out at a time, and you take a big clod of fresh blacktop out. Same with a pristine lawn. The idea is to leave it the way you came in. That's not recommended, but if I was in a field and it was, you know, just tractor mode, I wouldn't think twice to put all 3 stakes out if I could. But the first time, he had the foot on the stake so he could get one out without the others. I moved them around to get them off the foot, but it's some of the tricks you can do. You can be on the foot and control it, and that just allows you to try to pull one out at a time. The other thing you might do in this situation when this happens and it's on blacktop and you're trying to save it, is you ask, after it happens once, it's going to keep happening. You ask the other guy to come along, and all he's doing is this. And anytime it works up, first get it straight, and then let him drop it back down so it less chance of it causing damage. Now this one's pulled in now, so it's not going to clear itself. You can go ahead and take them both out at this point. I'll just go to the second one. Go to the second one, pull it out.
Second steak?
Yeah. All right. So go in at the angle that we talked about. So the next thing is that you can, if you're doing a 60, 80, 100 wide and you're doing a lot of pulling, your goal is to have as little motion as possible. On grass, I've had people report to me that they're pulling 4 or 5 stakes a minute. And the trick is to get the positioning of the machine right. And what that is these are closer than 10 feet here, but if it was 10-foot spacing, he'll start with this one, he'll pull it, then he'll do the next, the next, the next, the next. This is a 6 bar. When he gets back here, he'll do a hard right turn before he starts rolling forward or backwards. He rolls forward and comes back in at the same angle and does the next one. A good operator in a clean situation can end up pulling the stakes without having to back up at all. All that means you just have reduced movement. Reduced movement means you translated that into more stakes per minute. Isn't that the goal? Most of your time stake pulling is your maneuvering time. It's not the time to pull the stake. Now, a good operator, he will use the cylinder to retract and he'll be lifting with the arm and he'll be moving the throttle up and he'll be moving everything a lot faster when he knows that the controls and uses it all the time. That's where that speed comes from. So Jeff, go ahead and pull 3 in a row out just to get them out, and then we'll go to something else. So you see it's catching the bar, so there's no chance of the bar pulling up in this case. So on blacktop, that would be healthy. You wouldn't have to worry about knocking it down, but you're not always at that angle. But certainly these stakes are at an angle, so that's working against them. That's okay, any way you can get them. Let's switch to this stake here, and let's do it from the back. You might have to reposition, I don't know. So in this situation, if I was doing a stake and it's into the tree root, that's gonna reposition again. Just have to line up. If you're doing the back, you have to get it in a position where you can get the back to access it. So you're gonna back up. He's gonna pull it. Go ahead and pull it 12 inches, then reset it on the other one as though it's in roots and you have a more stubborn stake. Now in this case, the bar might come up and I could still pound it down. So you have, it's alignment issue, that stake's not straight, so we're fighting a little bit. In this case, I would rotate it out a little bit and then come into it, and you'll get it. So if all the stakes were perfectly straight, you wouldn't have some of these variables. Now, if that still didn't get out the stake, out of the tree root, you could put a 4x4 in there and accomplish the same thing. So, all right, so that's basically kind of gives you a sense of it. Now, the other question I have is, the people have is, well, do you really need that much power? I have roughly 1,500 pounds lift. Jeff, go ahead and see if you can lift this stake without using the hydraulics. Just lock onto it and lift the arm up. Either one, whatever one you can get at. Probably you can, because we had half an inch of rain here, and this is sandy loam. This is very sweet soil when it comes to stake pulling. Very forgiving. So because the boom is out, he's got less pull, but it works fine. And however you would go with the other one, but that kind of gives you a sense of the stake pulling. I think that covers it. So we tried to make this as modular as possible. If you ever have a fitting that gets hit, it's a replacement of the cylinder. You could field fix that. One of the things we do run into is a design criteria for the 7 and 800 series is that we don't want to design the tool to be so strong that it could break the machine. So one of the things, I'll tell you what, let's lock onto this stake over here.
What's that about? All right.
So it's 11 o'clock at night, it's raining, and it's cold, and it's dark, and there's no lights, and you still have 50 stakes to pull out, and he gets on this stake and it won't work. And he's a tent guy, and he just knows he's there to get the job done, and when he gets the job done, he can go home. If this 10,000 pounds won't pull it, and it's in a stake bar row, you go get other ones, you'll probably get this one out. But if for some reason it won't pull it, as a tent guy, the inclination is, I'm going to work till I get it done. And what would you start doing if you couldn't get it out? Start prying it. So you're hooked on the stake, you're trying to figure out if you can get some kind of fulcrum on here, whatever you can do to get it to break, and then I can pull it out. In doing so, if you go to the 755, 760, even more so, it has 3,500 pounds of drawbar traction to push forward. It's got wheels, it's got traction, it's locked down here, but it's 50 inches up to here. You put a tremendous amount of leverage on these welds. Now the question is, if your operator is running this and he's going to break something, do you want the tool to break or do you want the machine to break? I can make the stake puller as strong as you want so it will never break with more welds. But then I take a $800 fix for a broken interface plate and I shift it to this, which now becomes a $3,000 or $4,000 fix, and the machine's down for a week because they have to ship the part in, whereas the puller's down till it gets refurbished. Refurbishing these is to cut all the welds off and apply a new plate. We recommend that you just send them in to us because we can turn them around quickly. In fact, we always have at any given time an inventory of one refurbished one, so we can ship the same day as you ship to us in order to do an exchange, and then you'll just have a new one. But the question that comes up is, why not build this stronger? And the answer is because we don't want to damage the machine and run into a more expensive repair. So it kind of just gives you an idea of what our logic is there. So that finishes that. You can go ahead and pull that, and we're going to start to roll over to machines coming in. Okay, all right. So if you kind of get a sense of the, let's walk over here a little bit. If you get a sense of the discussion in the interview with Jukka, we struck a relationship which involves us buying the machines from Finland by container loads. The container loads that we buy, they come in currently to 2 different locations. One is an inventory in mid-continent, and the other is an inventory on the East Coast. In the future, we expect to have a distribution point on the West Coast somewhere as well, or at least out somewhere beyond Denver, for example. But the idea is to have the machines closer to where the customers are. The purchase that we do with Avant is they give us 2 time frames to purchase. One was the beginning of November to place an order for anything that's to be delivered from the end of January through the end of June. For our current order, we looked at what did we do in 2019. We looked at what we did in 2020 with COVID, and we tried to determine what's the mix of machines and what's the volume that we might sell, not having any idea whether COVID is going to get worse or better. We had to take a chance, but we want to be there for the customers. We placed an order for 40 machines. The 40 machines are spec'd out to the 10-ox configuration, which is what we feel serves us the best for our application. Jukka talked about having 40 different options that you can put on machines. We have the options on it that tent guys use all the time. That's not to say somebody else might not want to use an enclosed cab, which we don't usually get many of. But the point is we have the primary thing, which is a ROPS open cab, and it has the anti-slip capabilities. It has lights on it. It's the features that we need, but it's not the features that are needed for construction management, for example. Of the 40 machines, 10 of them will come in the end of January, and then they will progress in 3 more shipments, with the last one coming in June. And for those machines, if you have a known requirement for a machine next year, we're happy to give you quotes. The quotes would be based on today's pricing. Our pricing, we make our change at the end of January, as does Avant on their pricing. At that point, we shift to the newer pricing. So if you know you're going to look at a machine for next year, you could roll into that. If you don't know if you're going to, you just want to know that they're out there. If we by chance were to move more machines than what we have coming in, I don't think that's likely. We can certainly fall back to more inventory that Avant has, but they tend to be configured in such a way that we end up passing on costs that are greater than what we might otherwise need to spend. So,
and I just want to add in the reasoning behind this was, we ran promotion obviously with our factory order, and nobody really responded, and we get it. It's a hard time for everybody. It's a very uncertain time, and the machines we have sold have been situations where people are ready to buy. They're ready to get it in their fleet and get it in to be a tool that they can use right away. So we're trying to recognize that and let you guys know that, hey, we're going to be ready for you when you're ready for it. So just wanted to give you a little update on how we are buying and how prepared we'll be for when things do turn around.
And the mix of machines coming in, to give you an idea, you start with the 220s.
We have a couple of 220s. We've got a few in the 500 size, and then we're skipping the 600, and we're going to jump into the new 735. We really feel that machine is going to be a great value to most of the companies, especially the companies that are looking for that 755 with a lower price tag. And then we, of course, are going to have a couple of 860s coming in. There are certain companies that are finding a really great value in that size machine as well.
So, and what's unique about the 735 to us, Jukka didn't explain it, but we don't need the volume of hydraulic flow that many of the construction attachments need. So we can take a larger chassis with a 26 horsepower motor and do all the things that the 755 was previously doing with a 47 horsepower motor. And so it just becomes an economy that we can pass on. I'm very comfortable with 735. I was shocked that they came out with it, because I know they're always, the dealers we talk to are always more focused on what can we do to have more power, more power. It's just not what we do. So why put more power in people's hands if we're not going to use it? The other thing that's exciting, and I think Jukka spoke to it to some degree, is that in the last year, Avant has advanced the dealer network substantially with the opening of I think around 15 dealers. They have selectively closed some dealers in order to make way for a dealer who is going to be more productive in terms of service. We do hear you when you give us a call and there's a service problem, and we feed back to Avant with a reporting system any service interruptions that are dealer oriented, in the same way that I know they would report back to us if they got a complaint about services or communications they have with us. We want it to be an open channel, and it certainly is. Just to talk about another thing that we often run into is the dealer network is a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 type business. Sometimes they're open Saturday morning. Tent businesses run till 11 at night if they want to, and they run till Saturday and into Sunday. Scott and I both monitor the 800 number 24/7. If I don't get the call, he does, and vice versa. It would be very rare that we wouldn't. Might be Christmas, I don't know. I don't have much of a life, so no, seriously, I live with my wife. She has her own business and she takes calls into the crazy hours of the night, and we don't think twice about it because it doesn't interrupt our lifestyle. If it did, we wouldn't do it, okay? And we'd say that. But Scott's the same way. Now, he has a family of 4 and his wife, and it's a little bit more potential for interruption because he loves to coach baseball and so on and so forth, but he knows I'm going to take the calls when I can. So when to call us and when to call the dealers? I mean, that's a question that we get asked once in a while. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, we do take a lot of calls from the field, from the guys that are having issues where they can't get it running, there's something leaking. And, we try to help you to the extent where, one of us might be able to answer and troubleshoot that question. Sometimes we're able to call, dealers' techs. We've called Avant, their service department, and we'll get them on the phone with you and kind of connect you guys together. Your guy in the field and the technician at Avant, and they a lot of times they're able to work through those problems. It doesn't always work because things are mechanical, but it's a really something to try to see if we can get you back up and running right away with a very little delay.
So most of our calls are Avant related. They're very seldom tool related, because if it's tool related, it's usually something that might need to be replaced, or a hose or something. Those are easy. We want to be able to help you. Avant's put together a dealer locator, so if you go and put your zip code in, they can tell you where the closest dealer is. I would always make that your first call, and don't hesitate to make us your second call if A, they're not there, or B, they're not responsive. We would rather you call us and try to work through it than not to. Now, some of the calls we get, if you did a survey, I think you'd get an interesting response to this on this very meeting. Some of the calls we get are very simple. It's a seat belt, or it's something simple and electric that we can say, can you check this? And we'll have them up and running before 30 seconds is up on the phone call. But some of the things are more complicated. I have I think I sit at around 85% success rate. If somebody calls me, I can get them back up. Now, I can't create a key out of nowhere when somebody's lost or broken the key, but most things I can get up. If I can't, I'm going to give you a pretty good idea. If you comment in the comment side of this program to share thoughts with others or experiences, good or bad, that's a great thing. I'm happy to see you do it. But you're sharing it for the sake of others to understand, how to work through the system. But we certainly do welcome your calls if you can't get it solved through the normal channels. So I'll leave it at that. All right. So we're rolling over to do some forklift ox fork training. And for this, I'm going to have to change the mic over. Matt's going to take it over because, well, I'll talk about it in a second, but he's got a pretty good system going. So
we're going to do some Q&A, or you guys are going to do some Q&A while we do that. All right, we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Okay, an inexperienced crew of 6 can put up a 60 by 80 tent in 5 hours with the aid of a pneumatic stake driver. How many crew will you need to put up the same tent in 3.5 hours if you bring a tent ox? I think we covered this before. Yeah, it was just 3. Yeah, we covered that before.
Okay.
The Avant 860 is the biggest and strongest lifter available for the TEDx system. What is its maximum static lift capacity? Is it 2,760 pounds, 3025, 3250, 3,700 pounds, or 4,000? And the answer is a little bit over 4,000.
Matt Smith, of course, we've introduced him before from special events. Matt, some of you may know from other Matra events where he's been the speaker. He was at the spring training that was held at our property. He's been in a key management role with the company for many, many years, as long as I've been known them. And Matt sent me a video one day of the rodeo and some training that they had done, and he was then that triggered me a call to him, and we started talking about their training program. And so as we talked about looking at forklifting and loads and so on and so forth, I thought who better to talk about the concept of forklifting and determining what safe loads are than Matt. Matt's working with Jeff as the operator, and we're kind of just try to get a thumbnail sketch of how they've set their training up. A lot of it revolving around the forklifting, but it could go into other areas, wherever he's comfortable to take the conversation.
Yep, and that's where it'll start is basically a few years ago, we had an OSHA visit. So that kind of got us in the mindset of training and, following OSHA standards. Basically, your 1910.178 standard for industrial trucks is what we use to train on for the tent ox. And part of our goal here was to develop and implement a training program for materials handling. We do training on each of the attachments, a full 10-point checkoff list. One of the parts of the training that was particularly nerve-wracking for newer operators is the material handling and getting to know the machine and the capabilities of exactly what a machine can lift, how it can handle it. This is one of our exercises that we do to kind of demonstrate the stability triangle of the ox, where your center of gravity is, and kind of how to mitigate any changes with your articulation and your boom out as it relates to the load. One of our exercises is I take the new guy, and this is usually just a blind. I tell him to go and pick up, X amount of blocks that are this heavy. And so new guy goes, picks up X amount of blocks. They're this heavy. And what we're gonna see right away, and stop right there, this is a learning experience. When my new guy goes to the blocks, picks up, and we tip, this is where I kind of stop the class and I point out everything that we're doing here that's kind of incorrect. Basically, we're picking up a load. Inexperienced drivers, unfamiliar with the capabilities of the lift right now. So I'll stop the class and we'll reset. So we'll fire up the machine.
So obviously you didn't ask him to pull that block off the tall trailer and take the risk of falling a greater distance if you cleared it. So
Absolutely not. This is we try to do this in a controlled environment so nobody gets hurt and we don't break our, you know, our nice new 10-ox or a block. So from this point, I'll settle him down and instruct him to, you know, let's set the weight down. Let's pull out. That's another training point I do is I'm constantly walking around the machine and he should be looking over his shoulder to reverse. So we'll stop him. Hey, new guy, I want you to boom in for me. And now you're going to grab the blocks again. This time we're going to grab the blocks and take them to the trailer. Yeah, go ahead and set them up there. But I want you to move them to the far side of the trailer. Oh, so there we go. All right. And that's another moment where we shut down the machine. We had them tipping. So really the motion that we want when we're extending, we're pushing the machine to its maximum limits. When we're trying, if we're on a site where we only have curbside, the guys need to know how to handle and manipulate that weight. So basically we're gonna reset him. He's gonna tip the weight back, pulling back that center of gravity some on the machine. So we'll tip it back. Go ahead and tip back and extend it out there.
I'll interject something here, which is the 10-ox doesn't care whether the load's level or split back, but one of the gains you can get is, well, of course, always staying low. But when you rotate it back, particularly when you have a larger load like stage, the upper portion load is moving back also, so you can cause you to bring the center of mass back toward the counterweight.
Exactly, and that's what we're attempting to do is move the center of mass back by tipping. So when he's tipped and he's low, maybe 2 to 3 inches above it, he should be able to boom out and place the weights like he needs to on the other side of the trailer. So let's see if you can. And then you can set them. And that's about where you're going to get. And we'll push them from there. I want to demonstrate. Yeah.
Just to give you a reference point, Matt runs with a 528 and a 755. 523 reduces his load. I don't know if he's that familiar with it, but he's certainly determining what the limits are and determining it from that. So not surprising that he's used to the 528. being able to do something the 523 might not be able to.
And that's some of the idea behind training in our training program, is to kind of push the machine to its limits and let the operator actually feel what it feels like when you're maybe extending those limits. There's one other exercise that Jeff is going to do. And that's articulating with a load. And this is another moment where I kind of shut things down as a class, and I stop us right here. I explain that when your machine is articulated, it's not like a forklift where you always have, you know, your counterbalance is in the same spot. When you articulate a tent ox, we're showing that you're moving that center of gravity forward, and at the same time you're reducing your capacity. So the correct movement here would be to straighten up your load, lower your boom, and you'll correct yourself.
So Matt, besides this exercise, Matt, what other types of training things? What are some of the other training processes that you exercise?
I've actually brought my list here, and when I'm doing the hands-on portion of our 10-ox, I usually lead in with about a 3-hour slideshow class to go through the basics, and then I take each individual operator with my clipboard, and we basically run down a 10-point hands-on. It's kind of a test. It's pass-fail, retrain type of test. Fail meaning I have no confidence in the operator, and I don't feel like we can proceed any further. Retrain is I feel like they have the concept, maybe they need a little bit more practice, and pass is obviously pass. Our exercises, we encourage daily inspections on the machine. So that's your first thing, is to go through and point out where the you know, your oil, checking your tire pressure, checking your equipment, any leaks, any strange sounds that you might hear. I will have them, after that, I'll have them get on the machine and demonstrate to me the functions of the joystick. And we have 2 different types of machines here. So there's different functionalities out of both joysticks. I have them attach the forks. That's something important. We've actually damaged a piece of equipment by just incorrectly attaching it, and that goes with training. Placing the heavy load on a trailer, that's when we did. Operating the boom with a load, and that's the same thing when you get that reach and feel the tip. Driving on an incline with a load, that's something that you don't think you need to train in until you're in a situation on a hill or a grassy slope, and you're going the wrong way, and you're wondering why the 10-ox is losing traction. You're not driving in the correct direction with a load. Attach the stake driving attachment. I actually have them attach the attachment and demonstrate proficiency with driving a stake, operating it, removing the attachment, and correctly putting it away. The 10-ox, the system has you know, a lot of little self-storage things to keep the ends of the hydraulic lines nice and clean. So we kind of follow up on that stuff. And preparing the 10-ox for transport. And that's kind of a biggie. We use the ox lasso for strapping it down. So getting the direction of the pull on those is important. So, and that's pretty much our evaluation.
That's great. It gives you a pretty good feel of how Matt approaches it, and we appreciate your taking the time to share this knowledge with us.
Great. I'm happy to be here.
We're going to move on over to the roof panel puller, with development that we're working on, and I will start changing over mics here. So this is the Ox roof panel puller, and the problem we were solving about 3 years into this was that one of the labor intensive things as you get into structures and to the lesser extent 40 and 50 wide frame tents is pulling roof panels. On each of 2 ropes lined up with a keter, they'll have anywhere from 1, usually 2 people per rope, as many as 4 people per rope, doing 1, 2, 3 pull and trying to keep up with each other and go evenly. And that evolved into the roof panel puller, which uses 1 pulling rope wrapped around a capstan winch, which is connected to the machine, which allows you to use the friction from the winch in order to operate it. Now there's more functionality to it than that. I won't go into the detail, but in one fashion it might be used with this vertically with the machine pointed straight toward the tent, which is over there. In another fashion, it might be turned 90 degrees and this winch would be turned over and the machine would be parallel to the tent. That's not what we're going to cover here today. We just want you to know the concepts there. If you're pulling a light pull, you want to typically be lined up with the tent and just move from point to point faster. If you're pulling a hard pull, you need all the weight of the machine behind you, then you're pulling straight on, such as what this represents. But this rope would then go all the way to the other side. When it's at the other side, it's connected up to a pair of cables. The pair of cables go out to fittings, and the fittings on the current system are wheel kits. So it's a wheel kit, and in a structure it would slide into a tensioning bar for a 40 wide, 50 wide typical frame tent. It would be using a spacer bar. And what we're going to talk about here is a innovation that we're developing. It's not finished yet, but it's in prototype stage to try to come up with a system that's a little bit more universal, so everything you buy from us will work on as many tents as we can possibly discover that it will. And this process started when we had calls from people saying, I have a different tent and I'm trying to do this, and we're hearing the name of a tent that we thought people were using. They say they're using it, but we didn't get any indication they were having problems, and somebody saying, but it's doing this, what can I do to fix it? Well, we're not there because we don't necessarily get a chance to see all 10 different style manufacturer tents out there, so we can't test for every condition if there's a new one that's created. So this is in the goal to start to address that. I'm going to let Scott pick it up from there, because he was on the front end of the calls coming in and trying to develop it, including going out to customer sites and spending time looking at how our system works and trying to determine what fixes or what improvements we can make.
So the root of this really came into, like Scott said, some of the needs that customers have that are outside of the structure range. You know, when you have your Losberger structure or whatever brand it may be, it comes with that tension tube that goes through the sleeve. You slide your wheel kit in, hook it up to the cables, you're good to go. It's when you start dealing with some of the hybrid structures, you know, that's when you're coming into issues where you have to build your own pull bar so that those panels have something to connect on, so that we can still use this 2-in-1 point system. I went out in the field on some jobs, and you know, we tell people frequently, you know, take a 2-inch round tube, cut it down to the bay width. We'll put the wheels in. We do have wheels that'll fit in those, and you're good to go. And in a lot of cases you are. What we started finding is in 20-foot widths in particular, those sections of pipe, as they rolled up the panel and got over to that apex of that ridge, they started to bow out and bend, and then your wheels kicked in and they were on the inside of the rafters. And, you know, I'm not sure, I'm sure Eric from Lakes Regions is watching. We were out on a job site where I was trying to demo this, and man, this just kept happening again and again. It was a very frustrating day, but it got me thinking that we need something stronger that is in the 20-foot length, and that's kind of where we started down the road.
And if I was to give another credit besides Eric, I would give it to Jason Campisi from South Jersey Party Rental, who really brought the problem to my attention first, working in that case with Navitrack. And it was a real eye-opener to understand what he was seeing when I thought, well, I'd been told people were using the system for Navitrack. Well, people may modify what we send out and us not realize it. And of course, in my business and the ones that were near us, I didn't happen to get exposure to Navitrack, so it was a surprise, and we try to address it.
Right. And so then the other thing is, if we were going to try and develop something that would be a bar that we could have built and send out with this kit, you know, we get into the issue where there are companies now that have 20-foot bays, they have 15-foot bays, they have 10-foot bays. And what a hassle to have to take 3 different lengths of tube out to be able to hook it up. So the second part of the idea came, well, what if we had a bar that just somehow one bar covered all those different spans? And then the last thing was shipping. You know, this stuff's, the bigger it is, the more expensive it is to ship, the easier it is to get lost. And so we want to try and cover a lot of different things if we're going to design something. So this is the prototype of what has been come up with. And we just got this a few days ago, and haven't really, we have not had a chance to put it over a tent. But let me just show you how it does open. And these pins will pop out, and we're able to repin the different lengths. And for the sake of showing you, we'll...
So this is a spring pin where you push the button. And we played with alignment, so
with any prototype, you're gonna
need to find the sweet spot. There we go. Now I can't pull that out without pressing the button.
So we've got a 15-foot length here. Is what we're triggering, and go ahead and pull these 2 pins out. Same thing on both sides. And if we do the same thing on both sides, now we essentially have a 20-foot pipe.
4 holes showing?
Correct. Right there. know that if we take the middle section out, we just have the two silver ends, that accomplishes the 10-foot length as well. So again, this is something that's a prototype. We haven't tested it on any tent. Like anything else, I'm sure we're going to have some design changes as we move along in the next couple months. We just wanted to let you know that a couple things. We're working on some new things to make your lives easier. You know, I'm always surprised. People don't call and complain, and I guess on one hand, it's awesome. I don't like to take complaints. Nobody likes to take complaints from their customers. But those complaints are good in the regard that it forces us to keep thinking about redesigning and redeveloping and making things that help you guys work smarter, faster, cheaper, all that good stuff. So keep the complaints coming in, I guess is the best way to say it. But no, you know what I mean? If you have a situation, we're trying to work through, and as you can see here, we're trying to help out, meet some needs that we think are out there. So
Good. Okay.
So next we're going to go to the most fun part of the day. We're going to go to our stake driving competition, and let's see who wins.
But I'm going to have a little fun at Scott and my expense for a minute. We wanted to, what?
We're good.
I want to show you the Rube Goldberg concept we have going here. So we have our power over at the building, and we've got the extension cord, which is a 14.3, which Courtney, with her years of experience with United, has told us is nowhere near what we should have to bring it out here. Originally, we were powering the laptop yesterday in the rain with an umbrella, and it was cold enough and it got wet enough that the laptop shut down. So we innovated and put a cardboard out here and brought a heater out. So now we're heating the laptop and the battery is staying warm, and we haven't failed today. We did yesterday. And this is because maybe one or another of you people are going to say, wow, this is a great idea. Let's do something for our customers. We want you to know that if you put your mind to it
And get a cardboard box.
and bring some duct tape, that you can do just about anything. So we're set up with a camera, which has been rotating on a central point connected to the laptop in this case. And then we've been using a phone in that case.
Let's show our bubble gum and duct tape. So this is how we shot this. So this easily can happen on a very low budget and hopefully be a good production to get the right people.
All right. So anyway, we're going to go to the stake driving competition now. And so they're going to get over there and warm their machines up.
All right, we'll see you in a minute.
All right, the steak driving competition. We've got Courtney with the 220, and she's going to be operating that little puppy. We got Jeff running the 523. We've got Matt running the 755. Is one faster than the other? That's the question. Okay, so there's some rules. We're changing it up a little bit without letting them know so that we can just get a fair competition here. First of all, if you get on and you don't have a seatbelt, you're immediately disqualified. So that's, that's standard rules. The course is going to be that you start your engines, you drive the first set of 3 stakes, if you could point them out. Then you back up any way you want to get to the other end and drive the remaining 4 stakes from this end. When you turn your engine off and throw your hand up in the air, we know you're finished with your last stakes. If your stakes don't go in straight, you're going to get some time taken off. Do you have any questions? First 3 stakes, backing around the entire time, never going forward till you're ready to line up and do this. We would prefer you don't run anybody off the road. All right. Gentlemen, ladies, get in your machines, please. Seat belts. Ladies and gentlemen, start your engines. Ready, go. All right, we got to get started here. Courtney's doing the first stake first. They're all doing the back stake first. Matt's doing a little trickery. Jeff's doing traditional staking. Got 2 stakes in by Jeff. Courtney's got a second stake in. Matt's got a second stake in. Looks like Jeff's going to be the first one on the backup. He's a wild man. Jeff's in the 523. They're going strong, trying to keep the stake straight. All right, they're doing great. Taking good time. Looks like they're catching up with Jeff. Watch out. Courtney might have it if she keeps going. Oh, she's so close. Whoa. All right. All right, so let's, everybody just move your machine back and walk your stake line and tell me how many crooked stakes you have. All right, so I think Matt had a unique technique over here. His one stake is so deep he won't be able to tell you whether it's crooked or straight. Matt, give us a count on how many crooked stakes you have. Go ahead, you're on, Jeff. How'd you make out, Courtney? That one caught on the machine and pulled out. I've heard that before. I saw her hung up on it, so I get it. How many crooked stakes, not including that one? Courtney says one slightly. What do you guys think? How'd you make out, Jeff?
My last two.
Oh, Jeff, man. We were banking on you with that start.
I'm blaming on out or anything, but somebody barely stuck my steak in the
Did you find all your steaks, Matt?
ground. No.
Holy God. There's a steak bar there somewhere.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was good. I think we ought to take some time off on each of those angled steaks. Good competition. Great job. I hope we can get them out by spring. Thank you very much. We're going to move over to question and answers. Scott and I are going to move inside, and we will see you shortly. Hi, my boys. We're inside, and we got Blackbeard the pirate who's going to do the interview today. While you guys ask some questions, he's going to be the moderator to make sure that we don't tell any lies. So we are here, and we're ready to receive any questions you have. We thoroughly enjoyed spending time with you all today. We do have a machine coming in case somebody asks a question that's machine related. I've got the mic underneath my shirt. Scott's picking up on my mic, so if you don't hear us, we're just talking loud so we make it work. I hope I'm not too loud. But Scott, what do you hear about questions?
And the questions are going to come into my ear, so I'm going to repeat them as I hear them. So what do we got out there? Okay, that's a great question. So Miles asked, when we were hooking up attachments on the 220, does it not have the automatic locking when you tip the attachments back?
So it is the one machine that does not have the locking, and it's for lack of enough area to install such a mechanism. So you are obligated to get off and do it manually. But Courtney's shaking her head because she has a 225, and what do you know I don't? This is interesting. Good.
All right. So if you're sitting in the cab of the machine and you lift the boom all the way up, you can actually just lean forward by taking your seatbelt off and just clip them back in, and then you can lower it back down. You don't have to get out of the machine.
Now that was a real tip and trick that you would have gotten nowhere else than today. So good job.
So maybe we should install a PVC pipe in there, and all you got to do is push it out. There you go.
There you go.
All right. That was great. Thank you.
Yep, that'll be our next product announcement. Good job. All right, next question.
When we're using the push pocket, Cleveland mentioned, he said that little jump off the center pole when it comes off the loader, is it not
Yes.
safer to use forks and lift from the stake in the center pole?
Okay, so we have a question from Cleveland and related to the center pole, the pocket, push pocket. Um, is it not safer to use a stake to lift it off than to dump it off, if you will,
For unloading,
for unloading the center pole?
for taking it down.
No, for setting it up and unloading it off of the push pocket.
So if you think in terms of safety, if everybody understands the mechanism of what it's doing and that the pole is going to fire away from the pocket, then they just need to stand out of the way. So there's a little bit of uncertainty there. If you took an operator and he wasn't trained, he could put himself in harm's way by somebody being in the way. Lifting it by hand, well, on a 60 wide, you could do it most cases, but you get to a larger tent, you can't. So we're gearing it toward as many conditions as we can. What's your thoughts?
So I had this same issue when I had my business. We would always dump them off, and I was the primary operator most of the time. I knew my distance, 4 to 6 inches away. I could dump it off, and I would make sure to tell everybody to be clear, and we made sure everybody got their toes out of the way before we dumped it off. It's a much faster, much more efficient way, and it can be just as safe as long as the operator, you're making sure that your team is clear. I think you're going to save some time than getting out and having to put a stake through and lift it out. So I fully believe we should be tipping them right out. So next question.
Okay, the big question I think everybody has to ask is the guy in the center there, is that the new dress code for Tentox?
Oh, no, I think, so they wanted to know if the guy in the center here, this is the new dress code for Tentox. I think this might be something Special Events is leaning towards. Their new theme now is the Buccaneer look.
It's a uniform.
Right?
Yeah, Tentox is moving to toilet paper.
Yeah,
For
totally.
those of you who didn't catch it, the little fashion show, this is the t-shirt that we'll be sending out to the people who attended. These are hoodies, but you'll be getting t-shirts, and on the back it's a different imprint. And if you did not sign in and register in your name, then somebody responsible at your firm has to give us a list of who attended, and hopefully it's not all 50 people that work at your store. So Scott won't run out of t-shirts. So do we have a minute to interrupt Mike so we could introduce Mike?
So we're going to interrupt the questions real quick, and we're going to bring in Mike Fitzwater.
So we'll introduce you to Mike Fitzwater. Mike Fitzwater, some of you, many of you know from his various contributing time and effort that he's given to both MATRA and ARA, and runs a wonderful operation here. I met Mike as a later president from MATRA, met him at MATRA originally, sold him some trailers. We shared a lot of good information back and forth over the years, and he runs a fun operation. His mix of business is different than mine, just like everybody's, but it's just so fun to see who's out there and what they do. But Mike, you've been very gracious to give us the time and the space to do this, and it's been absolutely wonderful.
Well, yeah, I always know when I deal with you and deal with your folks that we're dealing with a class act. So you come in and you handle everything and you put on a first-class presentation, and as with everything you do. So pleased to be a part of it, and pleased to host you guys and have you guys down in Portsmouth today.
Nice,
So,
nice.
You guys,
So a quick question for you. Last spring, the MATRA spring training was scheduled here. It didn't go on. We don't know where we're going to be in spring. If they do a spring training, is that on the docket again, or do you know?
It is on the docket. I'm hoping that it will happen this year. I'm not sure when it will happen.
And we all could see why that's touch and go.
They, like you, have, you know, they ask me to do something, of course the answer is yes. So,
So it's March, so it's still coming out of the coldest time, so nobody could really anticipate where we'll be then. But I can tell you, Matra's intent is to give back to their member companies as much and as in any way they can, and certainly the spring training is one of the neat events that they do hold. So hope it happens. Maybe a different schedule, but that's great. Matt, you've been a wonderful host for us. We appreciate that too. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, guys. I'll let you get back to your questions.
All
Okay,
right.
you guys take care.
So for the sake of question and answers, Scott and I can stay here as late as anybody wants, and I'm going to let Mike running the control. I'm going to let you decide when to start to tail it off, and just let Scott know, because as you know, Mike works Matra, does events there. We're a pretty informal group. If people want to keep going and we don't need to do a bathroom break, then we're with you. So
Okay,
go ahead.
We've got 3 questions lined up. So go ahead, Jay. We're ready.
Okay, it's from George. He's asking, regarding stake pulling, do we use auger stakes on the majority of our tents over 40 feet wide? Does Tenax have an auger attachment with reverse?
With reverse. Okay, so this question is from George. It's in relation to auger bits. They use auger on the majority of their pole tents, and he's wanting to know if we have a reverse in relation to the auger bit.
So the auger drive system that we would use would actually be an Avant product. It's designed around, there's a couple different levels it has, and it's designed around both the industry for installing fences and also installing trees. It has plenty of torque for anything that we would ever do. They will always be forward and reverse, yes.
Great.
Same amount of power on each.
Awesome. Thank you.
But now, just to share a thought, if somebody's looking to do that, we haven't developed a product that we market as such because there hasn't been a lot of demand, but there are certain applications where we know it goes on regularly. The key to it is for us to get a sample of the auger that we're using, and then we will build prototypes on the interface, which is very simple, and we produce it. We've only sold one, and I'm fairly certain that that one would be different than the next one, just because there's a number of different augers out there that are used, and we want to make it an interface that really does make sense. If you know the Matra show that I was at last year, I actually came with an auger that we developed around a concept that was used by a company in Indiana for augering. It's a farm auger spiral built around a 1-inch stake, 42 inches long, with an interface, and it's a fabulous functioning thing, but it only works in certain soil conditions. Down here in Virginia, all the time. In Pennsylvania, where I came from, none of the time. It's just a matter of where you are. Now, that's for depth and precise locations. Now, if you have the flexibility of driving it and moving it, if it doesn't work, then obviously that opens the door a little bit, because rock is, it varies from one place to another.
Okay, next question, Jay.
All right, Josh has a question.
Josh has a question.
He's asked, does the double-headed stake puller work with Warner stakes, the ones that have ears?
Warner. Okay, so do you know if the double-headed stake puller works with Warner stakes that have the ears?
So the ears, I had that in the past, and it was a stake that was designed to go in an angle. Is that the same stake as they're talking about, do you think? Okay, it's a crisscross stake, and it has an ear out the top. And Warner's design criteria for that is to be able to have another stake go in and pry it to get it started. Is this stake used upright, or is this stake used diagonally, or are we talking about a different kind of stake?
I'm not sure, Josh. Let's see if he's still on. If
Josh is still here, maybe we can open the mic to him and he can.
Oh, Josh.
All right, while you're looking, let me go on to the next question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're going to go to the next question while we're looking this
And
up.
certainly we can swing back to Josh and have some discussion and post it on the 10X owners site so there can be some continued feedback. And on any issue here whatsoever, we can certainly follow up through the 10X owners site. That's
an interesting thing that you just said. So for the companies that are out there watching this that do own the machine, I know I've sent out invites to invite the owners or management or whoever on the team to join the owners group. And the interesting thing about the owners group is I watch it pretty regularly, and we see a lot of interaction where somebody will say, "Hey, I'm having this issue," or "I did this with my machine." And it's really a great group, a great way for you guys to share some of the innovations that you guys have come up with yourself, some of the unique ways you're using the machine to save time and make more money. So if you're not in that group, and you can message me, we can get you into it. But it's something you really should be going to pretty regularly, because it's a really good resource of people, and they all share this commonality with you.
So we're referring to a Facebook group in this case. As with any Facebook group or page, you can go in and change the 3-dot settings and say, I want to receive all notifications from this group. And if you haven't done it with 30 others, then that one will get priority. And it's a way to get that one in. I can tell who has done that on the 10X main page just because they always comment, because they see them all the time. If you don't set favorite up to be see every time, there's a lot of these that'll just go by the wayside. You may not catch them.
Okay, next question.
Ken is the fifth and final question, which is, I'm having trouble finding a new battery for my 225. Any idea where I can get one? He mentions that Interstate no longer makes a reverse terminal.
Okay, so who's this question from?
From Ken.
From Ken. So Ken is asking, he's got a 225, and he says he's having trouble finding a battery for his 225. Interstate no longer makes a battery with a reverse terminal.
I'd have to research that one and give you an answer. It'll be an easy answer because we'll just go to Avant technicians right away. I can't picture where Ken is, but it sounds like you're not near a dealer location. As you know, tent companies are all over the country, and there's more tent company locations than there are dealers. So, and to that subject, if you don't have good dealer support, or if you don't have a dealer that can respond to something, Jukka has set up an arrangement for us to bypass all systems and go to the head of maintenance to ask any questions we want. And typically when that happens, if it's a complex question, that one's not, we'll actually connect you up with that person and we'll conference it. In the process, we'll listen to the conversation and learn from it. And sometimes it involves directing you to a different organization to help you with the maintenance. Maybe, for example, United Rental has motors and hydraulic experience. So a local United they might be renting a generator from, they'll find it easier to go there than it will be to go to a dealer who's further away. We can bridge the gap on those types of things, and certainly the battery, we can come up with an answer on that.
Great.
So if you could log that, Jay, as a follow-up email to us, that would be great.
Terrific. All right, that's the last question.
Wow, good.
Right. Can we bring the team in here? I want to get everybody in here with the pirate. I know we already thanked Mike. You got to stay on camera.
I'm trying to think if we could pull that back.
I know we already thanked Mike. I want to give another thank you to Matt, Jeff, Courtney. We want to thank Jukka, Jeff, Hinck, and Courtney for the interview that they did for us. Jay, thank you so much for your help back there at the studio. Mike in the studio. We really appreciate it. We couldn't have done this without everybody's help and collaboration. And last of all, thank you to everybody watching. I mean, I'm standing here in a warehouse staring at an iPhone. I don't know who's watching, how many, but thank you for being a part of this. This was kind of a cool thing that we hoped would go well, and we hope you enjoyed it. We hope you got some good content out of it. And this may actually lead the way for us to do smaller, more informal things every month in a different format. So if you liked it, please send a comment. You could make comments in the chat area. We'll see those afterwards. send me a message if anything comes up or anything struck you with this. So, you wanna close?
And one more thing, Courtney, give him the punchline. What's your hair color?
It's 10 ox green and silver.
There we go. So now you got it.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye. Are we still live?
3, 2, 1, 0.